For much of my life, Samurai Jack was my favorite cartoon of all time. This was the one for me way back in the day, watching it every school night whenever it was on. It was an extremely simple premise. A samurai from the past is born and raised to fight the ultimate evil, Aku. He is given the only weapon in the world that can harm Aku, and the two of them engage in an epic duel. This is the premise of episode 1, but before the final blow is struck, Jack is sent into the distant future where Aku dominates the world. And now Jack seeks to find a way to return to the past. The world was simple back in the past, back when we were kids. We didn't really understand why something appealed to us, why it clicked so well. It was just fun or enjoyable. And before we even understood it or understood ourselves, this piece of media somehow became part of our identity and helped craft our formative years. Then when we're adults, we start to put the pieces together. And sometimes the jigsaw doesn't always paint the most pretty of pictures. You're left with this burning desire to get back to the past, back when the world was right. So let's talk about what Samurai Jack was back in the past. I couldn't call it unique among Western animation. There were action shows on multiple networks, Danny Phantom, Gargoyles, Warner Brothers Teen Titans on the same network, but Samurai Jack uniquely stood out for so many reasons. It was the first Cartoon Network original to not go with the cartoon branding since it began, and Samurai Jack started with what essentially functioned as a movie. Instead of one quick episode like most cartoons got right out of the gate, Samurai Jack got 3 full episodes that told one continuous story, where our samurai is tricked by the evil he tried to fight and is thrown into this alien world. Alien in every sense of the word. He's dubbed Jack by the locals, and we see his first fight, helping a race of sapient talking dogs fight off bug androids. Even ignoring the series proper, the pilot trilogy is super satisfying and fantastic in its own right. Like any proper introduction of a show, it does make you want more. But if the entire experiment ended there, I still think that it would have been loved, still be respected. And it's an experiment that paid off, since the network would do something similar with the later Foster's Home for Imaginary Friends, also giving it the full-fledged 3-act start. Right off the bat, we know that we're in for something special and something unique. The action of the show is impeccable. What you might expect as a simple hack-and-slash series, the pilot quickly quashes that as we see Jack create a wide variety of traps and use all manner of weapons. We see him go around the world, learning all of these different techniques and fighting styles, and by the end we see it pay off as he's forced to take on an entire army. The fight choreography is second to none in the show. Like, I've seen other action shows, a lot of them, and even to this day, I'd have to put Samurai Jack at the top of the hill, even next to some of its contemporaries, which were masters in their own right. Avatar, The Last Airbender, Teen Titans, Ben 10. Some of the most engaging episodes of this entire show are just prolonged fight scenes. No thought of character, scarcest thought of motivation. Just have Jack in a scenario and have him fight till he's pushed to the brink. Demongo, Smackback, The Hunters, Mad Jack. A lot of it comes down to the art. The show already stands out stylistically by nearly completely abandoning outlines. It's very reminiscent of a lot of art from Asia, which focuses on minimalism and uses color to help things stand out. And the show's use of color is so well crafted that even when Jack in a white robe is standing in a snowfield, you can make out every little detail. And every now and again you have this stylistic digression. There are episodes that go with a fresh, unique art style. Samurai Jack fighting Shinobi is the best example of this. A pure white character fighting a pure black character, blending into the backgrounds during a tense combat with the clock winding down. The sun is setting, and the later it gets, the more the samurai is forced to stand out, while the more the ninja is able to blend into the shadows that surround them both. The show separated itself from other action shows of its time by having these intense periods of just silent atmosphere. Other shows would do something similar, but Jack made this its identity. Sometimes you'd have half of the episode with no dialogue, and the only thing you hear is the Foley sound effects and the most subtle use of background music. It's all the more special when so many other action shows felt insecure about attracting a young audience, and so would pepper their fight scenes with quote-unquote witty dialogue, or God forbid catchphrases. If it didn't need to be said in Samurai Jack, it simply was not said. And there was a lot that simply didn't need to be said. Samurai Jack was a lot more mature than most of the cartoons of its time, both in imagery and in tone. This is probably the most well-known fact about Samurai Jack these days. Most of his opponents were some variety of robot, and whether intentional or not, the censors of the time did not care what Jack did to them. So you'd have fights with intense brutality, as Jack decapitated them, sliced them in half, hacked off limbs, and broke them apart. And it got messy because oil was used as a clear stand-in for blood. Not to say that the show is otherwise clean. Jack himself gets hit quite a bit, and he does actually bleed. And the show isn't subtle about the darkness that Aku has wrought upon the world. In the pilot movie, we literally see the silhouette of a dog crucified. One of the more comedic episodes of the show has Jack turned into a chicken, where he's forced into a future form of cockfighting. Even without the blood, the show never played it safe in that regard. It respected its audience, no matter who they really were, in a way that other shows simply did not, in a way that a lot of shows still don't. I don't want to make it seem like this show is all intense all the time, because it's not. Because Samurai Jack is set into the distant future, it's easy to mistake this for a science fiction show. It's not. Being in the distant future is basically a backdrop for the writers to do whatever the hell they want. Sure, in one episode Jack is going into space or fighting dystopian criminals, but another episode is a homage to Alice in Wonderland. And another episode, Jack is saving a medieval peasant village from a dragon with gastrointestinal distress. There's no concrete world or anything like that in Samurai Jack, but there really didn't have to be. There were only 3 things needed to stay consistent. Jack was the hero who would never stray from his quest to return to the past and fight all evil. Aku was that evil who would focus on causing misery and harm, even if double-crossing people caused his own plans to fail. And the sword that Jack wields is the only thing in the world that can harm Aku. So Jack is the only person in the world who can defeat Aku's tyranny. Beyond that, literally everything else depended on the story that the writers wanted to tell. From the super silly side, where Aku tries to tell children fairy tales, to super serious, where Jack comes across his hometown that had been destroyed thousands of years ago, and everything in between, from a train robbery to climbing a mountain. Personal preference says that I love the deeper episodes more. They're the ones that I resonate with the most. Jack climbing that mountain becomes a deep internal conflict about determination over the external conflict of just not dying.
Do you give up? Will you abandon their hope? Have you forgotten?
Jack literally being infected with Aku's evil and only being able to fight back due to the memories and the spirit of those he's helped in his quest.
Aku's victories are not your failures. The struggle against Aku is arduous.
You have won many victories, rekindling hope. Each sends their blessing.
Those kind of stories stick with you for years and years. Then again, some of the funny bits do stick with you too.
Because I knew that you knew that I knew that you knew that I knew you would cheat.
Samurai Jack stood out by going for the seldom used 2-act structure. Most media, cartoons or otherwise, goes for 3 or even 5 acts. Samurai Jack was different. After an initial catalyst, the first half of the episode would be building up the conflict or anticipation. And the entire second act was all about the release. It might have been a fight or even an entirely new conflict. Jack and the Traveling Creatures. Act 1 is using said creatures to get to a time portal. Act 2 is the fight with the Guardian. Jack versus Mad Jack. Act 1, Jack is getting pissed off as possible. Act 2, Jack fighting off his own doppelganger. I didn't understand it at the time, but this helped Samurai Jack just feel different. It wasn't like anything else, but damn was it good. Close to flawless. Close to it. Going through these series for seeing real, I've definitely gotten newer, harsher opinions on some of my old childhood classics. And going back here, I was definitely concerned that I might not like this show as much as I did when I was a kid, or found a slew of whole new flaws. But no, Samurai Jack still stood as strong as it ever did. Honestly, stronger in some other ways. However, there is one flaw that I do have to point out. If you do suffer from something like photosensitive epilepsy, this is a show that you'll probably have to skip. This show uses a lot of strobe effects. Like, it can even be seen in the intro. And during the intense action, there is a lot of bright flashes. And at points, it did even become a problem for me. It's not like the Problem Solvers, but it is something that I do think that I have to mention. There's also one episode in particular, Jack in the Haunted House. I think that episode is stellar. It is wonderful and tense and atmospheric, and I love it. But if you have any kind of photosensitive condition, do not watch that episode. It uses an art style that continually has that strobing effect. And while I do a lot of these disclaimers just to be cautious, I can imagine some people having a real problem with that episode in particular. Beyond that though, the one problem that Samurai Jack had left its fans was a lack of a sense of closure. The show had no ending. No real ending. This was not uncommon at all for cartoons back in the day. Powerpuff Girls, Dexter's Lab, even Ed and Eddie didn't get its ending until 2009. And whenever the shows did stop, people were usually satisfied with whatever they were left with. Samurai Jack was different though. This wasn't Bugs Bunny trying to avoid getting shot for all eternity. Jack was on a quest. He had a goal, a real thing that he was trying to accomplish. And even with the show's laissez-faire focus on plot, some beads of a narrative did sneak through. Jack was destined to return to the past. One of the more memorable antagonists, the Guardian, said so. And as the show ended and the internet exploded, fans were able to talk, reminisce, and rumors spread. As early as 2002, there were rumors of a Samurai Jack movie, which could have been in live action or even stereoscopic 3D. But as one decade turned to the next, it seemed to be one of those things that was just a childhood fantasy, and we all grew up, not really knowing how long ago it was that we made those fond memories. Could have been 5 years, 15, 50 for all that it mattered. For all that it mattered, hope was simply gone. And then there was a rescue from an unlikely place.
"50 years have passed. I do not age."
How much longer can you keep this up?
March 11th, 2017, Adult Swim stated that they would be airing a 10-episode Season 5. And unlike other reboots, the head was at the helm. Tartakovsky, the show's creator, would be on board as an executive producer. It really looked like Jack was back. I made my opinions known on Season 5 a long time ago at this point. Closer to its debut than today, actually. And I'll immediately let you know that my opinions have not softened. In fact, my opinions on Season 5 have grown harder, colder. It's almost symbolic in a way. Once upon a time, life was special and there was a sense of wonder that we couldn't explain. We grow up and we learn the secrets of the magic trick. We become older and more jaded and burdened down by what life did to us. The obstacles life throws at us begin to seem insurmountable. I tried to be generous. But then I started watching episode 1 of season 5, and in one of the first action scenes, we see Jack fighting, and there's this onomatopoeia of his impact scream in the back, like it's a slice of 60s superhero cheese that is held up just as well. Samurai Jack season 5 is one of those things that gets worse every time I watch it, because it is something that does literally everything wrong. I did a full review on season 5, so I don't want to drag this out with a full repeat, but honestly I probably can't even help it. Aku is depressed because he hasn't killed Jack in 50 years. This is objectively the wrong way to use Aku. Making him depressed strips away everything fun or intimidating or even interesting about the character, and the season as a whole heavily downplays Aku, which is bad because he's only one of the two real characters. Jack has a similar problem. Jack is traumatized by his repeated failures, which is also the opposite of why he was an appealing character to begin with. His hope and his determination was the main draw of investment. The show tries to play it super realistically with trauma, and honestly, it does it so poorly that it's actually borderline offensive. Jack's trauma is mostly portrayed by him talking to his hallucinations and having flashbacks. Sure, whatever. Do you know how Jack gets over his trauma? He thinks he let some kids die due to stupid narrative contrivance, and then Jack gets told he didn't get the kids killed. No proof, he's just told this. And then Jack is never in trauma again for the rest of the series. Throughout the 2010s, we had a lot of media that tried to tackle dark and difficult subject matters that were praised as progressive or deep or innovative. And I think that as time goes on, we will be re-evaluating them. And Samurai Jack Season 5 is a good showcase of this. The season comes across as a writer learning the word trauma for the very first time, knowing nothing about it, but wanting to put it in their work to come across as deep or saying something, even when they really have nothing to say about it except trauma is difficult. There's a reason that realistic depiction of a panic attack is a meme today. Realistic depiction of a non-flashback here. I refuse to acknowledge Season 5's premise on its own merit. The sword leaves Jack because he used it to accidentally slay innocents. However, in the original series, Jack and the Zombies shows that the sword cannot be used in the hands of evil to harm innocents. Is that a loophole or a plot hole? You decide! Jack is depressed because Aku destroyed all of the time portals. This sounds like an interesting premise until you realize that there were other ways that Jack could and did use to try and get back to the past. The very first instance of him trying to get to the past, the first one, is using a law of physics. Not a time portal, not a magic spell, and this was the first time. Episode 5 of the show, 2 episodes after the pilot movie. There are magic spells, wishes, so on. The Guardian episode showed that eventually Jack would return to that specific portal. And Season 5 reads as them like forcing everything to bend and break to fit this one idea for the most contrived idea possible. Season 5 wants to tell this big narrative story that went beyond the ambitions of the original, which was entirely episodic. And I do respect that. Or I did until it decided that it did not want to commit. Jack has to kill human beings for the first time, and that's the big conflict in Season 5. In theory. Let's ignore that Jack already did debatably already kill humans in the original series. The robot corpses were always about censorship, and they never had a real effect on the plot or the characters. This is more of a term that has to deal with music, but it applies here. Jack's adversaries being robots is completely non-diegetic. Samurai Jack has always been great at humanizing robots. That was the basis of one of its best episodes, Tales of X9. The robots, until they're sparking with oil spilling, look and act like humans or aliens or whatever. Jack even befriends plenty of them along the way, and the times that he is forced to confront clear non-robots, it's very rare that he doesn't treat combat exactly the same way. At what point does a robot become not a robot? I'll tell you at what point. At the point they're talking like a human with human desires, with human emotions. Jack versus Mad Jack, that's a perfect example. The samurai is fighting a bunch of bounty hunters who are all robots that explode in the end. So, riddle for the ages. Why would a robot who follows programming with no emotion need to be tempted with money to do its stated task, unless they have some form of human emotion? The conflict over killing a human being, it's forced. It's a conflict that I do not believe the samurai would have. I absolutely believe that he would never kill an innocent, but nothing about his characterization tells me that he would be fully apprehensive to kill in self-defense if it came down to it. Why do I think that? Because we had 52 episodes of that same thing. We, as the audience, know that all of these robots are robots, but much of the series has Jack failing to understand the future world that he's in. And maybe I could let the premise slide if they actually wanted to treat the conflict with some respect. So the big draw of the season is that Jack needs to fight off these real human beings or else he will die. He kills one off in episode 2. And then because we don't want an ongoing conflict, he kills 5 of the others in episode 3. And then he falls in love with the 7th. And I'm supposed to take this seriously as a serious adult conflict. Okay, sure. If I'm supposed to take this seriously, that these are human characters that we're supposed to somewhat empathize with, why is the only daughter of Aku, who stays alive, the only one of the 7 who has a name? Besides Ashi, none of the other sisters are given a name in the 5th season. And if you're wondering, some of the robots were given names. Also, Ashi doesn't give a shit about the sisters who were killed. She just ends up caring more about a ladybug, and ends up falling in love with a man who killed her sisters, justified or not. There's a sad irony here that a series that used to make robots feel very human is now reducing humans to essentially robots. I hate Ashi. She ruined Season 5 and the ending of the show. And her introduction as a character is where they should have scrapped what they were doing and started over. Because here's the main point. Here's the main issue with Samurai Jack Season 5. In Samurai Jack Season 5, the main character is not Samurai Jack. The main character is Ashi. Season 5 is Ashi's story, from her birth to her training, to learning that her worldview is broken, to her eventual death. She is the one with the actual arc that the writers seem to care about, considering how half-assed Jack's is. She starts out as fucking annoying in episodes 3 and 4, but because she is our main character, she needs to learn about how great the samurai really is. One of the biggest problems with Season 5 is that it does not know how to use its time wisely. Scaramouche gets revived, soaks up screen time for no reason, and then just dies. But episode 6 is a clip show. Like, in all but technicality, it is a clip show. We see old characters and moments and getting a reminder of the good times that we had with Jack doing the things. I like the song Samurai Jack. I like a more satisfying ending and a more well-rounded plot a lot better. In episode 8, Ashi and Jack randomly start falling in love for no reason, except for the fact that he's the male protagonist and she's the female protagonist. This is despite the fact that Jack is 50 years older than Ashi, and he's thrust into both a teacher role and a messiah role. Ashi falls in love with Jack after you had a full episode about everyone in the world praising Jack to high heavens. You want to talk about adult issues here? I think there might be a little bit of a power balance issue going on. But even putting all that aside, the relationship is full of the most bog-standard cringe and cliché sitcom tropes you can imagine.
Ashi, you're naked!
Their first kiss ends an episode with the first and only time that a licensed song has been used in this entire franchise, and it is so incongruent with everything Samurai Jack, if for no other reason than the genre it is. And as we all know by now, the ending of the ending. Jack uses Ashi to go back to the past. They kill Aku, and at the most dramatic point, Ashi disappears because we gave up writing 7 episodes ago. This is the most blatant example of a grandfather paradox that I've ever seen. And the ending was so bad and so hated that there's a video game that literally retcons it. Samurai Jack Battle Through Time. But only if you get 100%. If you get anything else, you get the standard ending. Otherwise, Ashi is safe and fine somehow, even though Jack killed her father before she was born. There are many, many rules you can use for time travel, but for some fucking reason, Samurai Jack picked the worst possible, least satisfying one. There's a cliche that the original show fell into. Jack abandons going to the past to save those immediately in the future. This happens again and again and again. And the finale does want us to care about all the characters that Jack sacrificed for. That's why they all show up in the final battle. However, by making it so the future is essentially erased like this, none of this shit ever happened. None of these people ever existed. And it makes Jack look like a fucking idiot every time he does something like stick with the astronauts to protect their ship instead of rocketing back in time. Because with the ending they shows, these scientists do not fucking exist. And even if they did manage to get born in the time stream, there'd be no Aku or his robots to worry about. Because of this ending, every time that Jack sacrifices going back to the past to save the people in the now, it's pointless. The ending isn't just bad, isn't just unsatisfying, it is damaging. To take it as canon means that, well, Samurai Jack never happened. Maybe that's what growing up in maturity is in the end. Realizing that wanting is better than having. Or maybe it's realizing that we can pick and choose where we view as canon. Samurai Jack Seasons 1 through 4 is still a phenomenal series, and I love it, and it is integral to who I am, and my passion towards animation. There are seldom shows you can find in past, present, or future that live up to its legend. Season 5 is fan fiction, and it affects my enjoyment of the original as much as the Shyamalan film affects my enjoyment of Avatar: The Last Airbender.